all our guests, and especially to our students and families. My name is Leslie Rheingold, and
my name is Adina Baseman.
We are your co-facilitators tonight, and we are both Holocaust educators who have taught Broward County High School and middle school and elementary school students for many years about the historical event known as the Holocaust. I also wanted to just do a quick shout out to Lori Levinson for being here tonight. Thank you so much for being a part of this and for helping this to happen.
So today, Thursday, January 27th, has been declared International Holocaust Remembrance Day by the United Nations General Assembly. This date marks the liberation by the Soviet Army of the Auschwitz extermination camp in Poland, where over 1.1 million Jewish men, women, and children were systematically murdered.
I would now like to share a message put out today by the President of the United States, and I quote, "Today we attempt to fill a piercing silence from our past, to give voice to the 6 million Jews who were systematically and ruthlessly murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators, and to remember the millions of Roma, Sinti, Slavs, disabled persons, LGBTQ+ individuals, and political dissidents who were killed during the Shoah. It was a destructive force so unimaginable that it gave rise to an entirely new vocabulary of evil words like Holocaust, genocide, and crimes against humanity. We join with nations of the world to grieve one of the darkest chapters in human history and to bear witness for future generations. Today and every day, we have a moral obligation to honor the victims, learn from the survivors, pay tribute to the rescuers, and carry forth the lessons of last century's most heinous crime."
The president continues, from the streets of Charlottesville, Virginia, to a synagogue just 2 weeks ago in Colleyville, Texas, we are continually and painfully reminded that hate does not go away. It only hides. And it falls to each of us to speak out against the resurgence of antisemitism and ensure that bigotry and hate receive no safe harbor at home and around the world. We must teach accurately about the Holocaust and push back against attempts to ignore, deny, distort, and revise history, as we did this month when the United States co-sponsored a UN resolution that charged the international community with combating Holocaust denial through education. We cannot redeem the past, but on this day, as we mourn humanity's capacity to inflict inhumane cruelty, let us commit to making a better future and to always upholding the fundamental values of justice, equality, and diversity that strengthens free societies.
In 1994, the Florida Legislature passed the Holocaust Education Bill, which requires all Florida school districts to incorporate lessons of the Holocaust as part of public school instruction in grades K through 12.
As Holocaust educators, we are asked many questions. Some of those questions are things like, why did the world not do anything to stop the Holocaust from happening? Or how could a human being commit such atrocities to other human beings? And did anyone try to help the Jewish people? And what could have been done to prevent the Holocaust?
Tonight, we are delighted to have some students with us from different Broward County schools who have been learning the answers to those questions and more. They have volunteered to be on our panel to share why they feel Holocaust education in our schools is so important.
All right, we are now going to have our student panelists introduce themselves one at a time. So when I call you by your first name, please introduce yourselves and what school you're from and what grade you are in. Hannah?
Hi, my name is Hannah Burke, and I'm a freshman, so 9th grader at Cypress Bay High School.
Taina?
Hi, my name is Taina Marcelin. I'm a senior at Nova High School.
Pharrell?
I am Pharrell Johnson from Tropical Elementary School in 5th grade.
Sasha?
Hi, I'm Sasha Mounier. I'm in 11th grade and I attend Cooper City High School.
Alondra,
Hi, my name is Alondra. I'm a senior at Nova High School.
Jaden,
Hi, my name is Jaden Mansell. I am a fifth grader who attends Tropical Elementary.
Tiago,
Hi, my name is Tiago, and I'm a freshman at Cypress Bay High School.
Alexa,
Hi, my name is Alexa Newell. I'm a fifth grader and I attend the school Tropical Elementary.
Khalees,
Hello, my name is Khalees Tyder, and I'm a 12th grader at Nova High School.
Penny,
Hi, my name is Penny Smiley. I'm a fifth grader and I go to Tropical Elementary.
and Ada.
Hi, my name is Ada Rodriguez. I am a senior at Cooper High School.
Well, I know that everyone in the audience wants to give you a virtual round of applause. We applaud you for being here. And Bianca,
Hi, my name is Bianca Jaramillo, and I'm a junior at Cypress Bay High School.
so let's give them a virtual round of applause. Thank you, our student panelists, for being here.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to be with you. So the first question for our panel of students is, why is it important to teach Holocaust education in kindergarten through 12th grade? Who would like to start?
I'm going to interrupt 1 second because we have another panelist that came on. Eli, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Eli Reiko. I graduated Western High School last year.
Thank you for being here. All right.
And Alexa raised her hand if you want to call on Alexa.
Okay, Alexa.
We have a lot of hands up now.
I think that it is important to teach Holocaust education through K through 12 because we should always know to not repeat the anti-Semitic and unkind words or draw horrible symbols like that.
Okay, Christian, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Christian. I'm a senior at Western High School.
Thank you.
We call on someone else?
I cannot see any of
them. Okay, so how about Tiago? Tiago.
Hi, so in addition to what she said earlier, I think it's important that we teach about the Holocaust in schools so that like people are educated and it doesn't repeat itself in the future.
Thank you. Pharrell?
It is important to teach Holocaust education from K to 12 because the Holocaust is a time that cannot be forgotten, and it's an important part of history.
Thank you so much. Bianca?
From personal experience and through learnings from my teacher, I think it's so important to be able to teach Holocaust in all years of schooling because there's so many instances in today's society in which an example would be the 94 Maidens video. I don't know if anyone on this call has watched it, but it's essentially where a lot of college students were asked if basic facts about the Holocaust and they couldn't respond. And at our school, we give similar questionnaires to that to the entry year Holocaust students, and not a lot of them know it. And so if Holocaust is just an elective that kids can opt out of taking, the new generation won't know enough. And our primary sources are dying off.
That film shows students from really good colleges too, who didn't know anything. Yeah.
It proves that they're smart kids, and if they hadn't been taught it, they don't know. But when they're taught it, they know.
Yeah. Who else? Alondra.
I wrote that it's important to learn and to teach about the Holocaust during, kindergarten through senior year, because learning about the damages of what like hatred and discrimination can do to so many people can help the younger generation like figure out how to identify tolerance and prejudice and like learn how to fight against these type of people.
Thank you. Good answer. Make sure you take your hand down if you have already spoken. Hannah, did you speak?
Not yet.
Okay.
Teaching Holocaust through K through 12 is so incredibly important for so many different reasons, but I think one of the main ones and one of the most important ones is because teaching the Holocaust is so closely related to teaching about tolerance, and teaching about tolerance doesn't have to even be on such a large scale as the Holocaust was. For instance, in like kindergarten, teaching kids about Holocaust and tolerance leads to teaching kids how not to bully, how to be kind to each other, and that's what's going to help prevent something like that from ever happening again.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Hannah, so that our audience can know that we're not teaching kindergartners about concentration camps. We're teaching primary grades about the lessons of the Holocaust, of acceptance of differences, and of being kind and being an upstander. So I'm glad you brought that up. Penny, your hand is up.
I think it is so important to teach Holocaust education to 1 through 12 so that we will learn from what happened and we'll make sure it will never happens again. And I think it's also super important to remember the people who risked their lives just so that others would not go through any more pain and suffering.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Taina? Taina, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. I think it's important to teach Holocaust history because it teaches about accepting diversity, which is really important in a world that's so diverse.
Very good. Thank you. And how about Christian?
I think it's really an important topic to be taught within K through 12 for the instance that when I first started the course for Holocaust, I only knew it through a basis of learning it through English class, through literature, and only had like somewhat of a general idea of what it was. Well, once I took the course, I had so much more information that is usually not taught within schools. So this information gives me a better understanding of what it is and what actually happened, not just one thing. And for that to be taught to kids like fifth graders, I was so surprised seeing that they are here, is because they're still young. I'm a senior and I just learned about all this, but the fact that they're learning it amazes me because they learn things about hatred and what happened in the world and how to stop it. They're our future generation, and this will help our society in the future.
Beautifully said, Christian. Beautifully said. And Hannah, I know you'd like to add to that.
Yes. As you said, you're a senior, and this is the first time that you're really going in depth into Holocaust and Holocaust history, which is why it's also so important to not only teach Holocaust through K through 12, but also in a range of different subjects, because there's so many different aspects of the Holocaust, whether it be numbers and math or literature and art that came out of the Holocaust. There are so many different perspectives that came out of the Holocaust that it's important to teach them in a variety of different ways, not just literature or the standard way of teaching.
Excellent.
So true. Anybody else?
Were there any other hands up that I can't see?
We have Philippa.
Yeah, I think teaching what happened during the Holocaust is very important so that that period of history does not occur again in the future, as many people that went through World War II understand the tragedies of the Holocaust for Jewish people and family members, because they were separated and without their families for many years. So I think it's important to teach that to the younger people as well as the older people, and educate them upon what happened back then.
That's right. Philippa, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Philippa, and I'm a freshman in Cyprus.
Thank you. Ada?
I think it's important to teach and learn about the Holocaust education because it's part of history, a history that is rarely spoken about, where we don't have enough information that is shared about this event, where it happened, how it happened, who was affected, who was impacted. Um,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Khalees?
Yes, I think that it's very important to honor that time, especially with all of the lives that were taken. And it helps bring awareness to how strong discrimination was and what people did to many people just because of who they were and what they believed in, which is very tragic. So I do think that it is very important to teach Holocaust education throughout all grades.
Thank you. Sasha?
I think it is important to teach Holocaust education to all grades because it helps teach the prejudice and discrimination that innocent people had to endure.
Absolutely.
Is that it? Because we can move on to the next question.
Bianca, is your hand up again?
I've listened to a couple of points that some of my fellow panelists have talked about, and I reflected specifically on something that Hannah and Christian talked about. Something that I've learned in school through some of my classes, specifically my Holocaust one, has been the single story concept. So oftentimes it's one story that we hear through K through 12, and it's not about just making sure that we have that education, but that education is spread enough that we learn more than just the story of Anne Frank, because that's often what you hear students refer to when you ask them what was the Holocaust. One of the first fallbacks they have essentially is the story of Anne Frank, because that's what's taught. That's what was taught to me before I reached a Holocaust class in high school. And that's essentially what my knowledge revolved around. It wasn't revolving around the experiments. It wasn't revolving around the stories of the ghettos. It revolved around the story of one 13-year-old girl who lived in the back of an attic.
That is really powerful to recognize. Thank you for that. Christopher?
Hello, my name is Christopher Sanchez, and I'm a senior from Everglades High School.
Hello.
And all I have to say is that for the longest time, it seemed like children were never meant to learn about the deeper meaning of the world's conflicts. For example, if you were a child growing up during the Cold War, then you lived with a deep concern that nuclear war was going to happen at any moment just for you. You lived in your own bubble that was America and the conflict that was threatening you. But with Holocaust education, it's sort of a gateway for you to learn about atrocities and conflicts that happen all over the world, not just us. You know, even for a child that's living in a different part of Europe, they can learn about the close traumatic events that happened in just a couple countries over. And with this whole new generation of students who are likely to be the last generation to speak to the first generation survivors, it's important to learn about their experiences so that we know that this did happen. This wasn't a fake event. This is real. This is real human lives that were taken away. And we cannot let that happen again.
It's really important, especially living in this day and age when we know that people are able to twist the truth. That's important. And I think that survivors who I've spoken to are so worried that people are not going to remember, and we have to do that. Good answer. Thank you. So the second question, that's for you, Adina, to ask.
All right, so the second question was asking if you have yourself any personal stories or connections that you would like to share about why you wanted to learn about the Holocaust. Eli.
Hi there. So, my apologies. I just tripped over something. Hi there. So, I was researching my family's history this summer, and I learned that there was, they came from a town in Poland that during the Holocaust actually was pretty much completely demolished. You know, and also this town actually had a story or a song written about it called "Es Brent," which means this little town is burning, and it was a song the resistance actually used a lot, and the person who wrote the song also passed away during the Holocaust, unfortunately.
Well, that's a personal connection. And again, you brought up the use of music, wherein Hannah brought up, there is art from the Holocaust. There was music from the Holocaust as well. So it is multidisciplinary as a topic. Maya.
Hi, I'm a senior at Cooper City High School. And so I am Jewish and I grew up immersed in that culture and in that society. And I've always had knowledge about the Holocaust and about what it means to be Jewish. But my family actually came from Poland. They hid out and escaped the concentration camps and they lived in the forest. And then they went and founded the Israeli Defense Force. And they kind of helped cultivate what Israel is now today. And I think that it's just really important for everyone to learn about the Holocaust rather than just for those of us who have been affected by it to know what it is.
Your family must be so proud of you.
I was just listening to the pride in your voice.
Yes.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to share?
I see Christian.
Hi again.
Hi again.
I have no personal connections. I've always had quite the interest within history itself. Actually, I recall a memory when I was in 5th grade, like some of our attendants here, where we would watch a movie, that movie being A Boy in the Striped Pajamas. That movie it ended. I watched it ended, and we were just, what else? Was that it? It again just gave a small amount of information to something much bigger. And I've always thought throughout, all of my teachings that why don't they teach this? There's so much history going around. I look in history books even today, and it's 1 or 2 pages long. But you go to the World War II, you go to the Cold War, and they're chapters. And so there had to have been more. And when I saw my course selection, there was a choice to learn about the Holocaust, especially, not just history. US history, 2 different things, but Holocaust. And so I chose it. And here I am today with so much more information than a lot of people don't know. So what really piqued my interest within the subject was the fact that there had to be more. There wasn't just a movie. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're showing us knowledge is power.
Yeah. Adina, I saw you put your hands up over your face when.
Are we going to talk about it?
We might want to mention it. You want to go for it?
No, you go ahead.
Well, just it's really interesting because that book, that movie comes up all the time as a favorite of students. And yet we all know now that you've been in the course, that didn't happen. That could never have happened where a little boy sat at a fence in Auschwitz. He would have been gone immediately. Little children were taken away quite quickly. But it did inspire a lot of people to continue to learn more. So there is a piece of the book that's great. But the other part is that we have to be careful that we make sure we teach the truth so that people who deny the Holocaust can point out and say, look, you're teaching things that really didn't happen.
Thank you. And, Linda in the chat is saying education is our only hope against hatred. I'm going to add that with the boy in the striped pajamas at the end of the book, you wind up feeling sympathy for the Nazi family. Yeah. And that is also a difficult part that Holocaust educators do not recommend as part of Holocaust education. So let's go back to a question.
Yeah.
All right. So Hannah.
Personally, and fortunately, I have no one in my family who was affected by the Holocaust. However, I have grown up Jewish. I observe a bunch of holidays and stuff, and I am super involved in my youth group at the temple and stuff like that. So Judaism has always been a big part of my life. And so, as a Jewish kid, you grow up and you hear stories about the Holocaust. And also through my temple, I've been fortunate enough to be able to meet survivors and talk to survivors and learn about their stories. And I've always found Holocaust education very interesting because it shows a different side of humanity that in the town that I live in and, in the environment that I
am lucky enough to be a part of, I don't see much of. But there's always hatred somewhere, and to be able to learn how to combat that and actively fight against it is such a powerful tool that I think everybody should be equipped with. And being in a Holocaust history class in high school has given me the opportunity to learn how to do that, and I'm very thankful for it.
You're very lucky that your family shared everything with you. As a child growing up, I never knew that many of my relatives had perished in Auschwitz. And I did not learn that until I had been teaching Holocaust studies for 5 years. My grandparents were very quiet about it. They didn't want to talk about it. What happened?
Oh, there you are. There you are. I see you again. Okay, Alexa.
I don't know, Mom.
I am part Polish. My grandmother was born in Poland, and my great grandparents survived the Holocaust. And so knowing that I have people who have survived the Holocaust, that passes a story down to me, and it's just so great that some people like me get to have family that has survived the Holocaust, so we can learn more about it.
And you had that personal connection and recognized it. Skylar.
Hi, my name is Skylar. I am a senior from Cooper City High School.
Hi, Skylar.
Hi, nice to meet you. So though none of my family members were in the Holocaust in concentration camps, luckily my family was able to escape from Poland. My great-grandfather, who had recently passed away last year, actively liberated the concentration camps. And hearing his story that he told me from a very young age, coming to my school to talk about it just inspired me to not only do more research, but do more research on my family and see how they were able to come to Ellis Island and just live as free Jewish people.
Tiago?
Hi, so I personally don't have any connection to the Holocaust, but I'm from Brazil, and in the schools there, it's not really talked about. So when I moved over here, I had a lot of Jewish friends, and I didn't really know about the history. So that's what's really inspired me to start learning through my language arts class, and hopefully I'm gonna be able to take a Holocaust history next year.
I hope you do. Philippa?
From a very young age, I started reading books about the Holocaust, what Jewish people had to deal with during World War II. I read firstly The Book Thief, and then I went on to read Anne Frank, Starry Night, and other books, some fiction, some that occurred and are just diary entries such as Anne Frank. And that taught me a lot about what really happened at a personal aspect to those people in the Holocaust, not just hearing it from historians, but hearing it from themselves and what they experienced at that time and how tragic it truly is.
Yes. Yes. Ada?
I have no connection to the Holocaust, but I faintly remember learning a little bit in my ESOL class in Massachusetts in 6th grade. And it really impacted me because the teacher was Poland and German. And she talked about her experience and how her family survived the Holocaust. And I was always asking questions to her about what it was and how it was. And I was always into history. And I felt connection to learning about the Holocaust studies when I transferred over here on my beginning of my senior year. Because I felt it's good to learn about history to understand what they went through where they come from, to learn about their culture, the discrimination Jewish people and many others faced during the Holocaust, their beliefs and the catastrophe that they went through and how it shaped them, how this community and how Jewish felt or what they went through and their life story. So that's something really impacted my life, and I still want to continue learning.
And you will. Bianca?
So, like Christian and Tiago, I grew up in Ecuador, which is a country in South America by Colombia. And I wasn't really introduced into anything Holocaust related at my school over there. It wasn't until I actually came here and I started middle school here that one of my friends who had moved to South Florida a couple years prior, she and her mother were invited to a session to listen to Eva Moses Core. And they invited me to go along. I hadn't really been exposed to anything Holocaust related. And so I sat down as a 12-year-old kid and listened to this incredible woman who had been through so many hardships, through the camps at an extremely young age, through some of the cruelest parts of the camps, from what I understand that those twins went through. And from there, I just picked up every book I could find that had something to do with it. I would, and still to this day, enjoy very much, this sounds a bit hypocritical, but the World War II section of any history class I take, because there's so much to learn. And I took a psychology course last year. I was able to study Stanley Milgram's Stanford Prison Experiment, which has a lot to do with obedience and how specifically the Nazi Party was able to influence so many people. And there's just those little facts about the Holocaust that, you know, watching a movie or reading a book won't give you, because there's so many different domains that the Holocaust has. And to me, being in Ms. Hainsworth's class, my global perspectives, I took Holocaust history last year, and this year I'm in a global perspective Holocaust-centered class, which allows me to delve into genocidal issues today, anti-Semitic issues today, in all sorts of realms. And to me, it's the most incredible thing, because I might not be, you know, a grandchild or a child of a survivor. I might not have a personal relation to someone who went through the camps or someone who was directly affected. But I think it's so important for all children in this new generation to be able to pass that on. And that's why I'm so grateful for the opportunities that we've been given.
Well, you certainly have shown a spotlight on the fact that this is such a multi-layered topic. And you and I and everyone on this call will never be done learning. We'll be lifelong learners. Ilana?
Personally, my great-grandparents survived Auschwitz, and my family's Jewish, and I grew up around that, and because of that, I do know a lot about the Holocaust, and I think that it's really important that Holocaust education be taught at all schools, because anti-Semitism is still a problem today, and a lot of us Jews still face, you know, small microaggressions, and I think it's really important that everyone understand like the horridness that was the Holocaust and how it affected millions and millions of people.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Khalees?
Like many of us, I was also taught about the Anne Frank diaries. I was taught it in middle school in 8th grade, and it did make me want to venture out and learn even more about the Holocaust. My brother also took the class last year, and he gave me an insight about the class, so that really made me want to step out even more and learn more about the class. So I'm very grateful for that, and how he has also helped me learn more about the Holocaust as well.
There are many, many diaries that you can read too, in addition to Anne Frank's, that will give you some really interesting information.
And different perspectives. Hannah?
Hi, I know I spoke already, but I would just like to add that after hearing a lot of different people's perspectives about how they were first interested in learning about the Holocaust or how they ended up taking a Holocaust course, a lot of people aren't Jewish, don't have any sort of personal connection through a family member, and some people haven't even had the privilege of interacting with a Holocaust survivor, but I also feel that you don't necessarily have to have that deep personal connection to understand and comprehend how the Holocaust was even able to happen, because discrimination is still massive today. Even though we may not see it personally, our friends have experienced it, family members have experienced it. It's everywhere. Hatred and discrimination is everywhere, whether we like it or not. And like that is what fed into the Holocaust, and that is something that people still battle today, whether you're Jewish or not, whether you have had a personal connection to the Holocaust or not. I think that you can still connect with it on an individual level.
Absolutely.
It's on a human level because we're all human beings.
What it takes is empathy.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have a hand up for that question? If not, I'm going to move to the next. Somebody wants to speak?
Empathy and tolerance.
Yes. Our final question for the panel is this: what can you as a student do to help create an environment that is accepting of differences both in your schools and in society? Got a lot of hands up. So how about Farrell?
What I can do personally to be more accepting and open-minded to people who are different from me. For example, different race, religion, and gender.
Absolutely. Jaden?
What I can do is that I can help by being kind, loving, and accepting of all people of different races and religions. Also, I'll be able to accept people's differences and accept all people are not the same. I want to be a leader by my actions and be an exemplary.
Thank you.
I wish I had had him as a student. Awesome answer.
Sorry, he's mine.
I know.
Alexa?
So I think that what we can do is that we can spread kindness everywhere, and we should accept everyone no matter their race, religion, or who they are and what they believe in.
That's right.
Christian?
On a personal level, on what I can do personally by myself is teach what's been taught. If all the information I know can just be spread around to my friends, like I do, to my family, every time I hear such misinformation, people say they think they know everything about anything, and they start telling me misinformation. I'm like, no, dude, you're wrong. And I'll start teaching it. The fact of, as I spoke of in chat, misinformation is what's making this teaching process so usable, likable, that needed, because misinformation is everything. Misinformation can cause havoc within a lot of things. There has been this movie that I have watched about, I can't remember what it was called, but this man was a Holocaust denier, and he got the idea to the Supreme Court that the Holocaust did not happen. And through the fact of misinformation, he almost passed that. And I have been taught that if a lie has been told several times over and over and over again, that it will start to become true. And how I will personally stop it is the most simplest thing ever, is to teach it to others, teach what's been taught, pass it down the ladder, and just help other people know about not only this situation, but what's going on today, what's going on in our world, what is happening within our society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Taina?
I think that to create a tolerant environment, we simply have to speak up against intolerance wherever we see it, and we should do it in a way that's not rude or impolite, but rather one that just educates the people who may have not had the opportunity to learn, or have simply been misinformed, or don't realize that what they're saying is harmful. And that way we can break the cycle of intolerance.
Excellent. Bianca?
I think the issue of tolerance has been touched upon by a lot of people, but something that still is a consistent issue, that this is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, but the Holocaust wasn't an event that only affected, the Jewish population of Europe. It affected the Roma, it affected the disabled, it affected twins, and a very key group that it also affected were the LGBT community. And so something that goes hand in hand with tolerance is also teaching our new generation, it's normal. It's not something that needs to be ostracized, because I come from a culture where being, liking someone of your same gender, or not being 100% certain in your sexual identity or your gender identity, makes you shunned from your community in its entirety. And that's a mindset that, at least myself, whenever I go to work, I work with younger kids and I try to make it known, it's not something abnormal. It's not something that, because they'll see two women together or they'll see two men together and they'll question it. And it's not something that should be questioned. And that's such a big issue that was so important during the Holocaust as it is today. And it hasn't gotten much better.
We're working on it.
Penny?
I think one thing that I can do as a student to make this community better is to just be friends with anybody from their race, their religion, if they're LGBT plus, and if they have disabilities, so that they don't feel excluded. So yeah.
Yes, it starts with hello, doesn't it? Very good. Maya?
Well, one thing that I want to touch on is how the Holocaust still impacts all of those communities today. Jews face intergenerational trauma, and they deal with the both physical and psychological effects of that to this day. And I think when it comes to breaking those cycles, the innate defense mechanisms that we're taught as kids aren't going to go away from this giant event. You look at a number, 6 million Jews were killed, but 6 million Jews who were supposed to continue on the line of Judaism were destroyed. Our population hasn't been able to regrow and regroup. We're still less than 2% of the population. We're still very small. And I know that regardless of how much we teach acceptance and tolerance and peace, it's not going to bring back the population, which is why I think we need to prevent it so deeply. We need to ingrain it into our society that we have to be tolerant, and education is the most vital way to do that. I think it's the biggest tool that we have as people to rewire the brains of so many people to understand how much hate can impact everyone, and how much hate can impact people on a group level, on a society level, and on an individual basis.
Thank you, Maya. Christopher?
Well, I'd say that apart from just being kind to everyone who seems to want help, or trying to lend a helping hand to anyone who seems to have ignorance and hatred in their heart, I would also say spreading awareness about LGBTQ plus rights. I'd say take a Holocaust course, or take a course that teaches you about Black history, because I feel like one of the most important aspects of learning about the Holocaust is the human connection. It's not just learning about everything so that you know like what happened and you can stop it from repeating, but it's also having a human connection to everyone in the classroom, to the teacher. I would like to put myself on blast here and say that I am a prime example of how ignorance and hatred can be defeated within oneself by just taking a Holocaust course or learning about Black history or learning about LGBT awareness, it will give you a sense of human connection. And I don't know how other people's classes went, but I'd say that after 1 year of being taught events from the Holocaust by my teacher, Mr. Klasner, it changed my perspective on life. And it changed that little boy that grew up with a lot of trouble in his childhood, with a troubled childhood. And I think we all know someone who also had a troubled childhood and wasn't shown affection or love at a young age, and we know how he turned out.
And Mr. Klausner comes with so much history because he's a direct descendant of Holocaust survivors. So you're lucky to be in his class. He's a great guy.
Tiago?
So a way that I think that we can like benefit society as like a student like I am is talk to like someone that you see is showing ignorance or intolerance, because it's really not their fault. It's just the way they were taught in a young age. So screaming at them or getting angry at them won't change their perspective. You have to like be nice, be kind, and try to like show them on a personal level that what they're doing is wrong, and you just have to teach them better.
Thank you for that. Ada.
I want to be able to connect with other communities. Sorry. So far, learning about others taught me to understand more. My mother taught me to always be open-minded, understanding, and welcoming to everyone, and how that can make a change. Taking the Holocaust course has taught me that these lessons taught by my mother and adding these characteristics into everything I do by adding these into everything I do can make a change. As understanding that kindness and acceptance of others can make a difference, and being important that these history moments that are not spoken and shared to others, it's important to understand that by sharing these things and understanding and helping others understand because they don't have much information about it, can make a difference. Many people are now aware of what happened and are now aware of these situations. And sometimes people are too close-minded to understand or wanting to understand these things. And I want to, not as, as a student, I will always be a student because I will always be learning, and help the environment and help others understand what these important parts of history impacted everybody. And I just want everybody to always share kindness and always be welcoming and open-minded.
Excellent. Philippa.
I believe to help people in this scenario, we must educate people about what truly happened in the Holocaust, as there is just so many people that don't know or are uneducated upon what happened. The more we educate people upon what truly happened, what's the history of the Holocaust, what is its sensible meaning, and the more we educate this to people, the better, because it is just such a sensible topic within the Jewish community, and we must come to truly respect and be respectful of what happened to them and what occurred during that time.
So true. Christian?
Hi again. I just wanted to add to some of the comments within our crowd about how hatred is taught. That seems to amaze me, that things that are taught seem to last for a long, long time. It seems to never go away. And the fact that hatred is still being taught in society today, what makes peace and love not be able to be taught? And I feel like the best way to combat hate and discrimination is to teach against it. That the only way a true society can have a society with no hate, no discrimination, as if that hate is not taught at all. The fact that I have to sign up for college and put my race on there, white, Black, Hispanic, that is a problem, that I have to identify myself within my race. But as Mr. Firestone has clearly said in chat with exclamation marks, there is only one true race, and in which that is human. And the second you start seeing people, not because of what they are, not because of who they are, but because they're human, that nothing else changes your perspective on them other than they're one of you, they're one of everyone else. And that is what creates true equality, is which of that of humans. And yet again, hatred being taught can only be fought against with is the teaching of peace and love. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bianca?
So after hearing, especially after what Christian just said and what Ada said earlier, something that I've kind of learned over the last 2 years in my Holocaust classes has been one simple phrase that has been, how's it possible to be a moral man in an immoral world? And I think an immoral world is quite literally what we're living in. And I'd like to thank Ms. Hainsworth for sharing that phrase, because it's a phrase that kind of puts you in a situation as a student, as a human being in this world, as a minority. It makes you question and it makes you think and say, what can I do to better a problem that's been here long before I was alive and will still remain long after I'm gone? And so it's about, participating in your school's minority groups, in clubs that quite literally push for equality, feminism clubs. For myself, I'll join Latinos in Action at my school. I'll go to their events. It's also about being that minority representation in bigger clubs. When I started my TV program this year, I was the only Hispanic girl on the board of my club. And now, as the years progressed, we've had more Hispanic officers kind of come into the role, and we have more kids jump into the role, and we have a bigger Hispanic audience now. And it's the same way for so many different clubs, and just being that little bit of representation, even if it's not a direct contact with someone, if it's an indirect, is such an incredible way of spreading tolerance and spreading equality amongst even our schools, because we are the next generation and we are going to be the next leaders in this country. And so we have to set a good foundation.
And
Absolutely.
that quote that you said, how can a moral man maintain his moral code in an immoral world? That's what we all have to really do, is when we see other people doing something bad or mean, we don't jump in, we stop it. It only takes one person to stop something from happening. We just have to be that person that is willing to do that.
Can I add on to that?
Yes,
Sure.
Hannah.
So just like a lot of my fellow panelists said, hatred is taught, but it's also a cycle. And what else is a cycle is kindness. So if we can move away from the cycle of hatred and move toward a cycle of kindness, what goes around comes around. So if you're spreading hatred, you're going to get hatred back, and it's just going to spread like wildfire. But if you're spreading kindness, you're kind to one person, they're kind to another, and that person's kind to another person. And I know that this is always the common example that people use, like, oh, if you see someone sitting alone at lunch, you should go and sit next to them and make a friend. But that's so underestimated, and that in and of itself is so powerful. Making a friend and showing someone what kindness really can look like is a great way to break the cycle of hatred and move toward a cycle of kindness and acceptance and tolerance. I have made so many friends this year that I never thought I would have made friends with. And I've also lost friends who I thought were better people, but then, they weren't tolerant, and I didn't want to be part of that cycle of hatred. So I moved toward the cycle of kindness, and I'm very happy with the people that I surround myself now. And I'm very happy with the classes I'm taking now. Shout out to Ms. Hainsworth. And I'm so lucky to be able to be a part of this program, because this is, and everyone who's on here is taking a step toward that cycle of kindness. So thank you for this opportunity. And since this is probably the last thing I'll say, I just want to thank all my fellow panelists for allowing me to have a different perspective on Holocaust education.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. What a great way for us to close this out. We want to thank all of our student panelists. You give us hope. You really, really do. You should see the chat, what people are writing about you. You were amazing. And I want to thank all our Holocaust educators who also joined us this evening. Thank you to the Equity and Diversity Department for all that you do to support Holocaust education. This event is monthly. They have these equity hours every month, and next month it will be on February 17th when we discuss the importance of learning about the local history of Black Americans here in Broward County. We would be remiss if we didn't give a special thank you to Lori Rich Levinson, our school board chair, who has been a continuous advocate for this work. And I know, Ms. Levinson, you probably want to say a word.
Thank you, Ms. Baseman. Wow. I don't even know what to say after this program. It has been such a privilege to join you all tonight. I'm just so moved by what I've heard you all say and discuss tonight. And I want to thank Mr. Albano from the Equity and Diversity Department. I want to thank Ms. Baseman and Ms. Rheingold, two of our finest educators that we've had and continue to have. Ms. Baseman, Ms. Rheingold has retired, but for your commitment to Holocaust education. And so many of you referred to your exceptional teachers. And I'd like to thank all of them for their dedication and commitment to you and for building such amazing relationships with you. And our student panelists, you all are the reason that we do what we do. You are articulate, passionate, empathetic, and you've discussed the importance of Holocaust education from K to 12 and the learning progression that you've had and how you apply it to the present, the importance of teaching truth and facts, and how much it should be integrated into all of our subjects, and the powerful tool it is to combat hatred. And it's uplifting to hear you all speak about what you can do to teach others the lessons that you've been taught. And I just want to say you're powerful, moving, and truly inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levinson, for being a champion of Holocaust education.
And I just want to say one more thing too. You are the reason why I miss so much being in the classroom. But you can all come and visit me at Nova at the Holocaust Library if you want to learn something different, something special. Have a great night, guys. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Wow, let's give it up. Let's give it up for Mr. Baseman and Ms. Rheingold and these phenomenal students. If you were inspired, moved, encouraged, uplifted in any way, let's chat about it.